Okay. Okay. Bismillah. Is it recording or what? Okay. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah. روح بساعدك. خذ. So, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to the second introduction of this course, the Quranic Arabic. We did the first introduction in the summer. Alhamdulillah, some brothers and sisters attended. And today I repeat the introduction. So next class, inshallah, we will resume with the study. This is a new curriculum that I am building, and it focuses on Quranic Arabic. So all of the vocabulary that we'll be studying here will be taken from the Quran, bi'idhnillah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the point and the purpose is to help Muslims understand the Quran. So far, we finished around maybe 6 to 7 lessons. Just to show you a little bit, you can see my screen, I guess. So we started with simple vocabulary like that: Baqarah, cow, Shams, sun, mountain, Jabal, with colors that are mentioned in the Quran, then a noun and an adjective. It goes gradually. So that was the first lesson. Then we have ayat from the Quran that have the same vocabulary that we studied. Then we move to the second lesson. Okay, this is the second one. Again with pictures. So we try to keep Arabic because everything is in Arabic as much as we can. But the pictures will help students understand. They have exercises here to practice. I can share this with you. So it is a free textbook. Still, I am building it. I hope one day I can publish it. And at that time, it will be for money. But now it is for free. All of these are mentioned in the Quran. For example, like pomegranate, ghurab, crow, egg. All of these are mentioned in the Quran. Then we move to the next one about some verbs. A little bit, as you notice here, we are getting a little bit more advanced, starting with verbs here. And the relation of people, relationships that are mentioned in the Quran with a text here kind of conversation. So a little bit gets advanced more and more. Some verses in the Quran. Then a story of Sayyidina Yusuf. And this is part 1 of Sayyidina Yusuf. That's mentioned in the Quran. So it will go over like episodes or lessons. And we stopped, I guess, at lesson 6 or 7. Okay, here. Qissat Yusuf, Prophet Sayyidina Yusuf, the story of Sayyidina Yusuf, part 2, and that was the 7th lesson. Like a blood, wolf, Dalu, and well. All of these are mentioned in the Quran. Okay. So what is special about this course and what approach I am using? Okay. I mentioned the purpose is to help Muslims, inshallah, understand the Quran. We're focusing basically on the Quran. There are many vocabulary that are mentioned in the Quran. Of course, we cannot teach them in one course. So this course is expected to have number 2 course, level 2, level 3, hopefully in the future, inshallah, will continue. And the more you study, the more you know of the vocabulary of the Quran, inshallah. Why Quranic Arabic specifically? Because students and people want that. They want that. Unfortunately, there is a rumor that Arabic language that we use in everyday life, standard Arabic, is different than the Quranic Arabic. And this is a rumor and it is not true. What we are using in everyday is very close to the Quranic Arabic. However, there are some vocabulary and structure in the Quran that we don't use in everyday language, but it is known to Arabs, even to Christians. So Christians, Arabic Christians who don't read Arabic, who don't read the Quran or don't study the Quran is recited, will understand the majority of it. the Quran protected Arabic language. So the current Arabic language, the standard Arabic language, is very connected to the Quran. However, because of the rumor that Quranic Arabic is different than the daily life, a lot of people lose their interest in Arabic, learning Arabic. And there is no curriculum about Quranic Arabic. I thought that let me fill in this gap and encourage Muslims to come more and more and study Arabic. Uh, but what I teach my children, what I advise people to do, is just to learn Arabic. And if you learn Arabic in general, by default, you'll be learning the Quran, the Hadith, the Khutbah al-Jum'ah, the speech, other Islamic texts, and news, and you can converse with people around you of the Arabic heritage. So it's something like that will benefit you a lot. Anyhow, so this is why specifically Quranic Arabic, because of the rumor, because of the demand, because there is a gap here that I try to fill. So I'm trying like to establish this curriculum that focuses only on Quranic Arabic, inshallah. I mentioned that there's no big difference between standard Arabic that we are using and the Quranic Arabic. However, the Quranic language is sublime, is way advanced, sophisticated, sometimes needs some tafsir here and there. But for the general part of it, you understand it. An illiterate person, Arab illiterate person who doesn't know how to read and to write, he can listen to the Quran and understand the majority of it. Like Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. So it will be fine and there is no problem understanding Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. If you read the story of Sayyidina Musa, it's very easy to understand, even to Arab kids. The majority of the vocabulary are well known, and like a snake and throwing a stick, and you hear the voice, Musa, all of that is daily Arabic language, like any kid can understand of Arabic heritage. The approaches that we will be following and adopting, namely, we are going to study the communicative approach. We are focusing on the communicative approach. But there are other approaches and methods. Like other sciences, teaching languages develop. And there are many approaches to teach languages. English specifically has the most research and experience of teachers. Nowadays, as you know, the English language is dominant everywhere. Many approaches were invented and were adapted. The oldest approach of teaching languages is called the grammar translation method. Grammar translation method. And from the name, you can expect that there is a lot of focus on a grammar and also on a translation. So, for example, you have two lists, English and Arabic, and like Arabic and English. And the students is supposed to memorize the English that is equivalent to the Arabic. This is the oldest approach, and it was used for centuries in Europe to teach people Latin and Greek books, because in Europe culture, you know that these languages that they are using now developed from previous, like Greek and Latin and other languages, nomadic and other, what you call it, Normand. So they have a lot of heritage, mainly from Latin and Greek, and they wanted to teach students. So they had a lot of books, but nobody was speaking the Latin and the Greek. So they wanted all the Greek. They wanted to just benefit from the books. So it was a good way to translate the old texts and to understand them with no need to speak, no need to speak, and no need to write in Latin or Greek. So that is like a grammar translation method. When I look online, the majority of the sheikhs or those who are saying we are teaching Arabic, they are adopting that grammar translation method. That is the oldest. They use it as the main approach to teach Arabic. It has some benefits, and every approach has some benefits, and of course, people benefited from all of them. However, some of them are better than others and faster than others. It's like programming. You can use like old ways of programming in the computers. Still, it is helpful in certain ways, but it has shortcomings. It is slower. It doesn't give you all the options, etc. So a grammar translation method is very beneficial, but it's very old. We use it in our class, but usually in the last part of the class when we move to the ayat that we are taken from the Quran. Before that, we are adopting the communicative approach, understand the vocabulary and to use them and to understand unique text. Then after that, we move to the grammar translation method. Another approach that's interesting to people is the SPY method. SPY method. The scientific name is the audiolingual method. That was invented by the American Army during World War II when they wanted to send the spies to Germany and Japan. And yes, American scholars and linguists invented this approach that focuses on listening a lot and speaking. It has a lot of drills, like repetition. Still, it is very useful and it helped spies, American spies, to go and sneak in here and there in Japan and Germany and learn from them. The focus was on listening because the spy will be listening to the other language and he should understand it. But the report will be written in English, not in German or in Japanese language, right? So there was no focus on the writing because there was no need for it. And also to read, if there is a text or something he was supposed to read. And if somebody catches him or if he has to go somewhere, he has to speak. So he would tell people, for example, where is the post office? Where is the bus station? So a lot of drillings in it. You're like, okay, where is the repeat? You know, where is the post office? Where is the restaurant? Where is like that in Japanese or in German? So it was useful for that purpose. They call it, you know, the military approach sometimes. They call it the military approach or the spy approach. Then in the 60s, psychologists invented, with the influence of psychology, invented what they call it the silent way. When they said adults behave like kids who are learning or acquiring a new language. So adults also acquire the language like kids. So you should always speak the native tongue and deal with adults as you deal with kids. Kids keep you like listening until they reach a level where they start speaking. And that was the silent way. It was beneficial and still it's helpful here and there. It is helpful. Like when you point to a kid and you tell him, stand up, and you point with your hands, qiff. So with the body gestures and movements, then the students will understand to stand. Qiff means to stand, or ijlis means to sit down. So that is the silent way. They call it the silent way. Then there are other approaches. Finally, from the 70s up to this very moment, the main approach that is used and it proved to be very successful is the communicative approach. Communicative approach is one of the most useful approaches that is used around the world. They call it communicative approach because it focuses on communication. Language is not to be a linguist. It is not to tell you the grammar because you are going to be an expert in a grammar. It is for communication purposes, focusing on the four skills that you need in any language. You need to listen to the language and speak it, and you need to read it with your eyes. Then you write it with your hands. The four skills. So listening and speaking and reading and writing. The four skills. So this communicative approach is worldwide, used now and very popular. Even when I took a course in last March and April with Cambridge University, I took a course in teaching English as a second language. I took this course, teaching English as a second language. The approach that we are still using and teaching is the communicative approach. However, as a teacher, you can take advantage of other approaches based on the need of the student. This is why I'm using the grammar translation method for the translation. But mainly we should use the communicative approach. Now, what is the benefit of the communicative approach? Number one, it will give you a big opportunity to practice the language, not only in the classroom, because it is for communication, then go ahead and practice the language. Listen to the TV, and we are in the age of technology. So go listen to the news, sit with Arabs, go over the internet and watch a drama, read, listen to khutbah and lessons and classes. So many opportunities. And the material that should be taught, in the school, in the class should be authentic. should not be modified and simplified. So we should have, like authentic text. In our case, we have the Quranic, like text, or what we use in our daily life, like of the relations. Like a little bit I modified to be more Quranic. Sometimes we have YouTube authentic, like YouTube things, or in the future, inshallah, when the level is advanced, to talk to Arabs or to talk to people or to listen. So that is the communicative approach. It will help you in everything because this is for communication. And from day one, you start communicating in Arabic from day one, based on the level of the student. So when you start speaking to students beside you, answering some of the questions, this is a way to communicate. So it requires more engagement from the students. The class should be active and students should be active, should not be passive listeners. Like other approaches, like kind of a grammar translation method, you are listening to the teacher mainly, who's giving the explanation. If there is a structure, he has to explain, etc. We do it sometimes, but that is the main thing in the grammar translation method. In the communicative approach, you have to practice yourself. You have to do things yourself. And that makes it more enjoyable because you have a lot of activities. So in each class, we have different activities. We have speaking, we have listening, we have talking, and we have reading. We have multiple activities in the same class. So this is more enjoyable than grammar translation and others, that are very, very sometimes students are very passive and just listening. This would take us, to another thing, which is, like the passive and being an active student. I know that adults in this community and other communities, they want to learn Arabic. But when you start Arabic class, there is an effort and students should do something. They should speak, they should read, they should do all of that. And they are not accustomed to that. They're accustomed to come to the masjid and listen to khutbah al-Jum'ah or to the speaker who is speaking, and being passive listeners, nodding your head, saying, yeah, interesting, without being active, without taking, an active role in learning. So what we have here in this course is exercise, after exercise. So we need, all the students to be active and to practice in the class and also out of the class. Please don't use English in the class. We try to minimize that as much as we can. It's an exception maybe, and next class, because they have vocabulary to use in the class, so we might use some, but later on we have to practice in Arabic to force the students to learn Arabic. Now, what's wrong with the translation? The teacher is going to say things in Arabic and then translate them in English. Unconsciously, the brain of the students will not do any effort, to learn Arabic. They will be just waiting for the translation, unconsciously, not thoughtfully, but it will be unconsciously. They will be waiting because, okay, after 1 minute, he will translate everything he said it. Okay, but if the teacher speaks only in Arabic and the class is in Arabic, kind of the brain will be more motivated. Okay, let me try, especially adults, who are interested. I have to do something to understand. I have to do something. I have to pay attention. I have to be more engaging. So it is more engaging, inshallah. So again, to summarize, we'll be using the communicative approach. And at the very end of the class, we'll go and take the grammar translation method. Let me show you. Here, this is communicative approach. So we have Arabic, just Arabic, and the colors. Then you have like a Baqara Safra. We put like the name and the adjective. Then, and some exercises here. You do exercises. Then we move to the last part of the class. Then we have some ayat from the Quran. That will be grammar translation method. Okay. If you want to study in the future, or if you want to teach your kids or find a teacher, know the approach. They are using grammar translation method, know that it is very old. Silent way is very old. You need something that is very advanced and the outcomes are most likely better than others. In any communicative approach, you'll find the textbook only in Arabic. You'll find the four skills of the language. You have listening activities. You have writing activities. These are some of the signs These are some of the signs that will tell you that this is the communicative approach. But if the teacher is just saying in Arabic and translating in English, saying Arabic and international, remember that the students, because there is no effort invested, most likely they will lose a lot of what they have learned immediately. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make it easy for all of us. This is an introduction, and inshallah next Sunday we will start with the vocabulary that we'll be using in the class. For example, we'll have dars, as you see here, dars, and what does it mean? This is a grammar translation method, okay? The vocabulary that we'll be using in the class. So sometimes we say, like our class today, our dars today, darsuna. For example, we'll say darsuna. So our lesson today is an اسمع, استمع, listen, اقرأ, read. So all of these مع بعض, together, speak together. All of these are vocabulary that most likely we'll be using in the class here and there. So we'll start with them, inshallah. Then we'll move to lesson 7. Because these lessons are already recorded. Lesson 1 and 23. All of them are already recorded, okay? So you can start now studying on your own, by yourself, online. I can share the link. And we have WhatsApp group. Let me add you to the WhatsApp group. And once we start, inshallah, next week, we'll start with this vocabulary that we'll be using. Maybe the week after, we'll start with lesson 7 and 8, inshallah. Okay, let us stop here and see if somebody has any question. And after that, we close up. Any question? Go ahead, please.